Hi BookTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan. I am just one reader, and today I will be wrapping up the books that I read in June. Please forgive me, my hair is completely a mess. It's completely inexcusable. Some people have said that it looks like Cynthia Nixon's hair in Sex and the City, the original series, season 1, season 2. I have to agree. But anyway, moving on. Let's just ignore this Mexican afro that's going on. Anyway, in the month of June, reading-wise, I had a pretty good batch of books. There are 7 books that I read, and only one was disappointing. It was very disappointing, probably the most disappointing book of the year for me, but the rest was pretty amazing. So I will be trying to be as brief and concise as I can regarding these books. If you are interested in hearing more of my thoughts with more depth and in more detail, you can check out my Friday Reads videos. That's where I dedicate more time to talking about these books. So I will only tell you a brief impression of each book and whether I would recommend it or not. And of course, if you're interested in discussing something more specifically, we can do so in the comments. So let's get started with the wrap up for June. So the first book that I completed in June was Heavy Weather. This is a novel by P.G. Wodehouse. It is part of his universe of Blandings Castle, which includes a whimsical, warm, loving, and just spectacular cast of characters that are so lovely and so ridiculous and colorful that you just can't help but falling in love with all of them. And this novel was just a rollicking adventure, a roller coaster of mishaps and misguided people doing things that are completely nonsensical. There are hidden intentions, and every character has a hidden agenda. It's like it's so entertaining. I compared this book to, well, I said that this book made me think of Scooby-Doo, but also Le Nozze di Figaro by Mozart. I think it's a weird combination of both of those. It's delightful, it's charming. What I really love about P.G. Wodehouse is his writing. His writing is absolutely perfect for me. It feels lush and luxurious and beautiful, crisp and elegant, very elegant writing, but there's a warmth and a sense of comedy, a sense of humor that I've never found anywhere else. So yeah, if you have never read P.G. Wodehouse, maybe the Blandings Castle universe of stories would be a great place to start. I gave this novel, which is included in this book, but the novel is Heavy Weather, I gave it 4 stars. The second book that I read was The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Biddle. This is nonfiction. It is exactly what it says it is on the cover. It is the journal entries of Sean Biddle during a whole year. So he's documenting what happens in his life as a bookseller, the owner and the person who's in charge of the very famous The Bookshop in Wigtown, Scotland. And we learn about him individually, personally. We learn about his circle of friends and the cast of whimsical characters who come to the bookshop. We learn about the customers who come to the bookstore. We learn about the book selling business in particular, which I thought was really interesting. We learn about what troubles Sean Biddle, what is creating conflict in his mind, especially Amazon and Kindles and the whole technological revolution of reading. I thought this book was charming, incredibly heartfelt and honest. I laughed out loud several times. I really enjoyed his writing, the way that he observes certain details of certain things or people, and it's just so hilarious and sometimes sarcastic and snarky But I love that. So yeah, this was just delightful from beginning to end. I also gave this 4 stars. Then I read The Overstory by Richard Powers, and this was the big disappointment. I frankly hated this book. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I feel like foam is going to come out of my mouth. Like I'm gonna start spewing foam like a rabid dog. This book just felt wrong to me. So, okay, The Overstory is the Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Richard Powers. It is a very well loved, highly recognized, highly praised novel, which is about trees, and it is structured as a tree. It is about characters whose lives are very significantly tied to trees and nature. And the whole thing of this book is that it has a very noble, important, urgent, necessary message to convey. And I understand the urgency and the importance of that message and delivering that message through fiction. However, I just couldn't help but feeling like it was so badly done. I really couldn't care about the writing. I couldn't care about any of the characters, and I actually thought that I got very annoyed at the author because it's one of those books that felt very heavy-handed. You know, it's just like beating you over the head with an idea, and you have to think about it just got annoying and condescending to me. There were some parts of the book that I liked early on, but the rest was just bafflingly horrible to me. And the characters, I was very annoyed by them. So yeah, I can understand why this is an important book. It is. And I would recommend that you try it out because you might love it. But I didn't. I thought it was just new age and like hippie. Oh no, I couldn't do it. I gave it 2 stars, and it was not for me. Then I read The Tiger in the Well, which is book 3 in the Sally Lockhart series by Philip Pullman. This is a series that I remember loving when I was growing up, and I have to say that rereading them as an adult has been a so-so experience. This installment was sort of a mess. There were some things that I loved. It's about Sally Lockhart, this wonderful feminist badass woman in Victorian London, and how she has to prove herself to the world. She has to move around in a society that is heavily dominated by men, and men with horrible intentions trying to take from her what belongs to her, and so she has to reclaim it as her own. So there are some feminist, social, and even historical issues that are very well portrayed in this book. There are some aspects about the adventure of this book that I really enjoyed, but there were some other things that I just found extra, or even the ending itself I found quite anticlimactic. You know, it was just not as satisfying as I remembered it being when I was growing up. So yes, I gave it 3 stars. I love Philip Pullman's storytelling, but this was not the best one. Then I read The Fermata by Nicholson Baker. This is a novel, a very stream of consciousness novel, so if you don't like that, stay clear from this one. In this novel, we are introduced to a male character who has the power to stop time. And what does he do with that power? Well, he could do something valuable, he could do something important, meaningful, or at least interesting. But what he ends up doing is he stops time, and he uses that ability to basically satisfy his sexual impulses. So he starts doing really weird, creepy, horrible things to women and their bodies. So this novel made me think a lot of Lolita and some other books that really question morality, that really question manhood, that really question sexuality, and all of these important issues. that part of the book I really enjoyed. I really liked the weird fascination that the author plays with. He manages to create something very much like Vladimir Nabokov in Lolita. There's this like weird sociopathic fascination, perverse fascination that is created, stirred up in the reader when you are experiencing the horrible, reprehensible things that the character does to women. But it's like watching a car accident or a train wreck. You just can't quite look away, you know? So I enjoyed some of the philosophical or thematic ideas that are presented in this book, and yet I gave it 3 stars because it was not the most compelling read. It was not the most enjoyable experience, if enjoyable can be the right word here. I found the book a little too heavy, a little too repetitive. It is stream of consciousness, and it can get boring sometimes. So I like the idea. I think it could have been better as a much shorter text, but I gave it 3 stars. It's interesting. At least I'll give it that. Then I read Cuse Legacy by Helene Hanff, and let me tell you, this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. It absolutely has to. This book was just a very Juan kind of book. It was almost a 5-star read. It was just wonderful. Helene Hanff is wonderful. If you don't know who Helene Hanff is, you should. She is wonderful. She wrote a very popular book called 84 Charing Cross Road, and she's written many other nonfiction texts that are just delightful. And in this particular book, well, this book reads like a miscellaneous sort of assortment of different anecdotes and memoir pieces. So it basically is a collection of pieces in which we follow Helene Hanff's life throughout different stages of her life and her career. It was wonderful. I loved it. There's something in this woman's voice and character that always makes me feel connected. You know, that there's something that only literature can do through memoir and through these kinds of texts that really connects you to another human being that you never actually met, and yet you feel so incredibly connected to. Yeah. I really, really love everything in this book. It's just so charming and so relatable and nostalgic. For some reason, reading Helene Hanff always makes me remember of the vibe from Gilmore Girls. You know, there's just like a warm, loving, joyful, slightly nostalgic feeling there that is just so important to me. So yeah, I if you enjoy 84 Charing Cross Road, you have to read this book and all of her works. And if you haven't read her, you should start somewhere. I would recommend 84 Charing Cross Road or Apple of My Eye. But yeah, I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads because Goodreads doesn't allow half stars, but this would be 4.5 stars, very close to 5 stars. Finally, last but not least, I read The North Water by Ian McGuire. This is a novel. It is an adventure story about a whaling ship that goes to the north. They are from England and they go north and they are, you know, hunting animals and looking for whales. You know, it's your typical Moby Dick kind of storyline, I guess, premise. It also has it reminded me of The Revenant, you know, the feel of that. It's a very brutal and unflinching kind of novel. There's a realism in the way that the author portrays these characters and what they do. It's a very gruesome novel because, you know, horrible things happen. Everything goes wrong in this trip. And so there's rape, there is murder, there's brutality, there's animal cruelty. I wanted to vomit several times reading this book. I was in shock reading this book several times. It's a very short novel, but it really packs a punch. What I really enjoyed is that it's just very enjoyable. It's not doing anything like super special or groundbreaking that I was able to see, but it does some things really effectively, and I overall thought it was just a very satisfying short little novel, very adventurous, very fast paced. It was incredibly easy to read, and I actually would suggest this book to younger readers who are making the transition between young adult literature into adult literature, because this book is very adult in themes and all of that, but it's written in a way that is very fun and engaging and compelling, and it really moves along quite nicely. It was not a perfect book. I didn't like the way that the ending came in very suddenly or a little bit rushed. But I enjoyed this book, and I also think that it's saying some things in an interesting way. There's, a conversation or a discussion about religion, about nature, about homosexuality, about manhood, about, intention. There's many interesting thematic discussions to be had with this book. I actually think that this book deals better with nature than the Overstory. Some people are going to kill me for what I've just said, but that's just the way that I felt. This was very gruesome and very fun. I gave it 4 stars. And there you go. Those are the books that I read in the month of June. I hope that July is even better with more wonderful, amazing reads. Thanks for watching this video, and please, if you want to engage in conversation, leave a comment and we can start a conversation. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video.